Chapter 3 was a chapter of death. We saw how sin cut off humanity's access to the tree of life. But there's another kind of immortality. We live on through our legacies. So the next couple of chapters will focus on progeny, as well as death. Now the man had relations with his wife Eve, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain, and she said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. And she uses the normal Hebrew word for man instead of baby or child. Eve might have believed that Cain was the promised seed, the serpent crusher. Again, she gave birth to his brother Abel. That word brother might start to sound repetitive in this story. It's woven in 7 times here. The name Abel means breath or vapor, and his life will indeed be like a passing cloud of smoke. And Abel was a keeper of flocks, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Nothing wrong with either of these jobs. Having dominion over the animals and working the ground were always part of God's good plan. So it came about in the course of time that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of the fruit of the ground. Abel, on his part, also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat portions. These seem to be some sort of offerings of gratitude. And the Lord had regard for Abel and for his offering, but for Cain and for his offering he had no regard. The text doesn't tell us why God had regard for Abel and his offering and not Cain. There may be a hint where it says that Abel brought firstlings and fat portions. Maybe he gave abundantly in gratitude. And maybe Cain merely brought an offering, a token of religious duty more than a sincere act of celebration. God can't be manipulated by token offerings like the gods of the ancient Near East. He is God, and he's free to do what he wills without our input. Offerings don't really mean anything without an attitude of thankfulness, a posture of worship. I wonder how they knew that God approved of one and not the other. Did he tell them directly? Did he give a sign? Did they see general prosperity or lack in their prospective livelihoods? We don't know. So Cain became very angry and his countenance fell. God, I did what I was supposed to do. I gave the offering. I checked the box. That's what you wanted, right? Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? God takes Cain aside to engage on a personal level, and he reasons with Cain. If you do well, not just ticking off the box, won't you lift your head high because you've done what's acceptable? Notice how God is rooting for Cain. He wants him to do the right thing. And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. The ball is in Cain's court. God sees Cain as redeemable. Cain is made in God's image, made to reflect and enjoy God's goodness. But sin crouches like an animal or a threshold demon pouncing on its prey. It might be easy to blame someone for our sin, but God says, you must master it. Cain told Abel, his brother, doesn't say what he told him. And it came about when they were in the field, where there are no trees to hide behind as their parents had done, that Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and killed him. The crouching animal won. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is Abel your brother? He knows the answer, but he wants to draw it out of Cain. Cain says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Cain appeals to ignorance, but he has the knowledge of evil. Just like Adam failed to keep the garden safe from the serpent, Cain denies any responsibility to keep his brother safe. And God says, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Cain can't hide his secret. God too has the knowledge of evil. He saw the abuse, and he hears the victim. Even Abel's blood cries out to his maker. The word blood here is plural, maybe because of all the generations who were now cut off from Abel's line. The author of Hebrews makes 2 passing references to this story. In chapter 11 he says, And by faith Abel still speaks even though he is dead. In chapter 12 the same author refers to Jesus the mediator of a new covenant and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Abel's innocent blood cries out for justice, for life, for the opportunity it never attained. Jesus says, yes, it's all yours and more. Not only is Abel vindicated and raised to new life, but the crouching animal that desires Cain has been neutered and muzzled. Jesus even forgives his murderers and gives us the power to share that forgiveness with others. But that's not to say that consequences are erased. God says, Now you are cursed from the ground which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. The ground, the thing that Cain worked as his livelihood, has become a source of estrangement. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. This act of violence has polluted the ground in such a way that it limits the abundance that God has offered. Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is too great to bear. Behold, you have driven me this day from the face of the ground, and from your face I will be hidden, and I will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Who is Cain afraid of? We know that eventually Adam and Eve will have other sons and daughters. Others have suggested that there are other people outside of this area, and that the opening chapters focused on a single representative family who would become the chosen nation. In any case, God validates Cain's concern. Yeah, there are people out there who are going to want to kill you. And you and I might be thinking, yeah, you deserve it too. But that's not how God responds. Look at this. So the Lord said to him, "Therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance will be taken on him sevenfold." Another number 7. Complete justice. Apparently, even though Cain's a murderer, he bears the image of God, and God's mercy protects the undeserving. And the Lord appointed a sign for Cain so that no one finding him would slay him. God gave something to protect him. We don't know what it was. Last time we saw the word sign was when the stars were placed in the sky as time markers. The next time we see it will be a rainbow in chapter 9 and circumcision in chapter 17. So was it environmental? Maybe. Was it something on his body? Probably not. It doesn't say the sign is on Cain, it says it's for Cain, but we don't know. Apparently it signaled to others that this man was under God's protection. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. It's interesting that he was in the presence of the Lord until he himself went out from it. God has been taking all the initiative here to pursue, accommodate, and protect him. Cain is a wanderer, and yet he's also found a level of security where he's able to build both a family and a city. Verse 17, Cain had relations with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch, and he built a city, and called the name of the city Enoch, after the name of his son. Enoch in Hebrew is Hanok. It means dedication, related to the word Hanukkah. This son and city may be a fresh start, a dedication to new life and beginnings. Why did he build a city? Was it for protection? God had already promised to protect him, and yet Cain seemed to want more than that. Now to Enoch was born Irad, and Irad became the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael became the father of Methushael, and Methushael became the father of Lamech. If you're keeping count, this Lamech is 7th from Adam in the genealogy. We know by now that 7s should make us perk up. And indeed, we have a break in the lineage to talk about this guy. Cain's line comes to a climax in Lamech, who takes 2 wives for himself. Up until this point, we've seen monogamy as the ideal, and in the garden narrative, God freely gave Eve to Adam as a corresponding ally. Rather than receiving God's gifts, we find Lamech taking 2 wives for himself. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. Now amazingly, God continues to bless this lineage of Cain. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the lyre and pipe. As for Zillah, she also gave birth to Tubal-Cain, the forger of all implements of bronze and iron, and the sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. So we're seeing innovation and technology. The spread of death seems to inspire humanity to reach out and build. Their innovation is going to climax in chapter 11's Babel story, but for now we note that God is allowing culture to flourish even as sin spreads like cancer. The lyre and pipe will be redeemed for godly purposes later in Israel's history, a good reminder that something with so-called secular origins doesn't necessarily make something sinful or evil. Yet we know how people are. When he finds iron, he's not thinking about golf clubs and cookware. He's thinking, how can I use this to stab or bludgeon someone to death as efficiently as possible? So he has this cute little poem. Ada and Zillah, listen to my voice, you wives of Lamech. Give heed to my speech, for I have killed a man for wounding me, and a boy for striking me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 77-fold. The last time we saw a man break out into poetry was Adam's song about his wife corresponding perfectly to him. Now this creep Lamech seems to be intimidating his wives with the threat of domestic violence. Listen up, ladies. You'd better get in line, because I take what I want, and I destroy anyone who gets in my way. Look how he rationalizes it. Cain shed innocent blood, and God gave him a mark of protection. Well, I'm going to take advantage of that. After all, I acted in self-defense, so my protection must be even more. If someone hurts me, I'll get revenge 490 times over. Most likely, Jesus was thinking of Lamech's 77-fold revenge when he told his disciples to forgive personal offenses 77 times. God is a giver. Lamech was a taker, the culmination of a line of sin. But let's step away from Cain's line for now. Adam had relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, which means appointed or put. She says, God has appointed me another seed in place of Abel. Apparently she's disowned Cain. He was the seed of the serpent in a sense. The author wants us to look for the seed of the promise. To Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. Enosh means weakness, so it's appropriate that then men began to call upon the name of the Lord. What a contrast to Lamech, who was boasting in his crushing power, his ability to destroy. Now we have people calling on God's name out of weakness, depending on the provision of their creator. To call on someone seems to imply two things. First, that the person calling knows that they are weak. They need help avoiding the fruit. They know their own potential for violence, jealousy, and revenge, and they need help taming the restless beast that gnaws at their souls. They know they're naked and exposed. Second, they know that the Lord can and will meet those needs. We can learn from these stories that it's God who called first when we were hiding in the trees. God brought the clothes to us. It's God who pulled us aside when our hands were still covered in blood. And because God showed us that He's invested and He wants to bless and He wants us to be reconciled, then we can call on Him and expect Him to be faithful.